prioritize what we value. And if we don't value ourselves first, we won't prioritize ourselves. We'll be the first ones that come out of our calendar when it comes to that taking care of ourselves. And then that, and then it invites more curiosity of asking yourself, what are some activities that nourish me? How would I describe myself? By my character traits, not my titles and roles and the way people have identified me by what I do, but who I am as a person. How would I identify that?
Welcome to Talkin' Shit, the podcast where we get real about the unfiltered truths women face in the quest for perfection. I'm Jana, your host, a dietitian and fellow woman navigating the pressure to have it all together, the perfect body, career, relationships, and making it all look effortless. Who set that standard anyway? Here, we're calling out the diet fads, hustle culture, beauty standards, and everything else that keeps us feeling stuck. But we're not just venting, we're diving into how to break free and rewrite the rules on your terms. So grab a coffee or a glass of wine and let's talk some shit. Together, we'll uncover how to live a life that's unapologetically yours. This is Talkin' Shit. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Talkin' Shit podcast, everyone. I am so excited to have Melissa here. So Melissa and I met at the Fresno Women's Network, and we were talking about the podcast. She also has a podcast, and she is going to really, I believe, blow your mind and shift your perspective as it relates to boundaries in particular today. So Melissa, thank you again so much for your time. I'm so excited to dive in and talk some shit with you. So please introduce yourself and let the audience know who you are.
Oh my gosh, Jen, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation. My name is Melissa Crook. I'm 56 years old. And when I hit age 50, I had a series of events that really got my attention, some semi-serious events that got my attention that helped me to realize that I had been living in order to keep the peace and appease everyone else around me. And not because some of those people were asking that of me. That's just what I knew. I'd started getting that messaging when I was very young. And so I continued to live my life that way until my body started screaming at me and said, no, we cannot carry this anymore. And I started talking to other women as I went through just working through these things and really healing and allowing things to breathe and be acknowledged and be felt that I had not made space for before. And I realized women that I knew everywhere were doing this. I'm like, we got to talk about this, exactly what you're doing here. We got to talk about the shit that gets in the way of us living our healthiest, most authentic life. And so that's why I started my podcast, the Field Podcast, back in 2021. And it's grown into a network from there where I've got several resources now. But my passion is for women to know you are worthy, you are valuable, and you get to choose. You get to choose to not abandon yourself to keep everybody else feeling safe and happy. You get to choose you first. And it's not selfish to do that. And we'll talk about why.
Ready to lose weight, feel in control around food, and build a lifestyle that actually lasts? The Healthy Body Collective is my monthly coaching community where you get expert guidance from me, Jana, live coaching, real accountability, and a supportive group of women who actually get it. You can click the link in the show notes to join now. See you inside. Okay, so I feel like just the can of worms are out, right? Like in that introduction alone, right? And I know that a lot of women are already resonating with what you have said, because as we talked about before we started and hit record, when we are in these one-on-one situations with women, they share a lot with us and a lot of intimate, vulnerable experiences that they have that they don't feel comfortable in sharing maybe in their, and I'm air quoting, real life. And there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of, I shouldn't feel this way. There's a lot of, I need to keep my shit together, like just get it together and like keep pushing through. Like there's so many different things that come through when your body just says like, hey, I need your attention. So Melissa, for you, what did your body start to express that you had to really tune into?
Well, I started having a racing heartbeat, elevated blood pressure, and nothing was physically wrong with me. Like I'd gotten tested. I was having, just being totally open. My bladder would just unload, like if I, and just like all these really weird things that were happening. And I was fit. I moved a lot. And it was just like, what is happening here? And I knew I was in perimenopause at that point, but it was more than that. Like a lot of times, and sometimes when you go to doctors, they're like, oh, this is just the part of your life you're in. And they just kind of poo poo it. And I was fortunate that my second trip to the ER in a 2-week period in the fall of 2019 with these symptoms, a nurse kind of slipped a paper underneath my, underneath the bed wires and they're like, I can't officially tell you this because this doctor isn't part of our system, but I think this person can help you. And so I called that person the very next day, the very next morning, first thing. And I also kind of had a heart to heart with my husband driving home. He's like, babe, I have watched you put everyone and everything else before you and all your stuff on the back burner for years. And this was never a message I got from him. This was a message that I got in a script that a lot of us get when we're little girls of how we're supposed to show up in the world and what is acceptable and what is not, what we should and should not feel, what emotions are appropriate, what emotions are not. And so we live by this script to stay safe, to be affirmed, to be accepted, acknowledge all these things. And so many times no one asks us how we feel about it, or if that's even what we want or what we care about. There's all this box that they're trying to make us fit in, and it goes on for generations. And no one, most of the time, most people don't have any ill will about it. They just never ask themselves to get out of the box. It's just the messaging that we get down the line. And at some point, many times, and it shows up in many ways. For me, it manifested physically where your body just says, you are not living in a way that's honoring to you. And it's time for you to pay attention to that. And your body is not against you. She is trying to tell you she needs help. So I think there's a lot of narratives that I really had to learn to shift about that. I had to learn that my body wasn't falling apart. She was trying to tell me she needed attention. She couldn't carry all of this anymore. And she was setting up some alarm bells to get me to prioritize her. What my husband mentioned to me about, I've watched you carry this around. A lot of anxiety was part of my experience. And anxiety, I had to learn, is not something you get rid of. You change your relationship with it so that you are able to see it like, oh no, I'm not getting chased by a lion right now. I don't need to be, I don't need to be in this hypervigilant state all the time. I'm safe now. I'm no longer unsafe. Thanks for the warning. Don't need to live there anymore, versus the anxiety that's letting you when there's truly something problematic coming. So I first had to I first said to my therapist, I got to get rid of this anxiety. She's like, I've got some good news and bad news for you. The good news is I can help you change your relationship with anxiety. The bad news is you are not going to get rid of it. And that was really, for me at first, I was like, oh, shoot. Really? I was like, oh, damn, I thought that's what I was going to do here. I'm going to come in, get some tools, get rid of my anxiety in 6 months and walk out the door. That's not how it works. So I really had to unlearn and relearn a lot of practices and a lot of narratives that weren't serving me. And the big narrative that I'd heard a lot, anytime I challenged or wanted to know or was curious about something different, I got the message that I was being selfish. I got the message that it's not you put everyone else before you. You care for everybody else first. And if there's any scraps left for you, great. And I came to realize as I was going through this journey, that is so diametrically opposed to what is healthy for us. One, and two, no one wins when we don't take care of us. They get it, because they're getting the tired, irritable scraps that are left, martyr feeling woman. And that's not, it doesn't feel good for you, the person, and it doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of it either. And one of those narratives that we get that I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. So one, that idea that it's selfish to put yourself first, no, it is actually serving to put yourself first, because you fill your cup, you fill your resources, you give from an overflow. You want to be in the spaces you're in. You're present with the people that you're in the room with. You are not feeling mad or irritable or you're guilty or tired or wrung out, because you have mindfully chosen to make sure your resources are filled before you went out and worked and participated and interacted with all the spaces and relationships and workspaces and communities that you interact with. That's where everybody wins. And in like you and I were talking about before, Jana, how do you want people to remember you? And if you have daughters, what do you want to model to them? And what do you want them to see? And it's that understanding that choosing you, and I operate off these principles, and I mentioned them at the beginning. You're worth all of it. You're worth the rest. Resting is not lazy. And there's this idea that if we are going all the time and doing and producing, and just to keep moving for the sake of moving, that's not being productive. That's just moving for the sake of moving. What if we took that time to rest and refill our cup and our reservoir so that when we do go out into the world to do all the things that we're engaged with, that they get this healthy version of us? And the other thing is we don't have to say yes to everything. Mm-hmm. And so getting to know ourselves in a way that allows us to identify what our values are, what our expectations are. And that then informs you on where you want to be involved, engaged, looking at your calendar. Is it aligned with any of those things? Because if you start feeling angsty, that's letting you know something's, off kilter. Yeah. So it's really that, but it was that I had to go on that journey first before I could help anybody else with that journey. Because I kind of organically through this process was able to come up with support of therapy, family, friends, in my close-knit circle, the mentoring work I was doing was able to wait a minute here. There's some key questions we can ask ourselves on a regular basis to help keep us in alignment and give us the confidence and remind us of our value. And so when I'm working, so I had to learn first though, if I was going to do that work, I had to believe I was valuable. It didn't matter if everyone else thought I was valuable if I didn't believe it. And so I call it embracing your layers. And it's those learning to accept and acknowledge and hopefully love, but even just acknowledge all those pieces and parts of your story, the decisions you've made, the things that have happened to you, and being able to embrace them in a way where you're able to view them from a sphere of curiosity rather than judgment. So those decisions, I can't believe I stayed in that relationship for 3.5 years. I was so stupid. What was I thinking? No, we're going to stop for a moment. We're going to go back and we're going to, meet yourself where you were in that season of life. We're going to think about who was around you, how relationships have been modeled to you, what was the narratives you've grown up with, and we're going to help you I get it now. I don't love it. I still wish I hadn't stayed in it for that long, but I see how I got there. And I can now I'm no longer embarrassed by that. I no longer feel shame about that because I'm meeting her where she was at that time. And it makes sense she did that. Yeah. And so that's an example of how you might embrace a hard layer and the reason I bring that into the conversation is because we prioritize what we value. And if we don't value ourselves first, we won't prioritize ourselves. We'll be the first ones that come out of our calendar when it comes to that taking care of ourselves. And then that, and then it invites more curiosity of asking yourself, what are some activities that nourish me? How would I describe myself? By my character traits, not my titles and roles and the way people have identified me by what I do, but who I am as a person. How would I identify that? And that starts giving you information with your knowledge of your value, what fills your cup, how you would describe yourself. It allows you to start seeing, oh, that's where my values lie. Those are the things I care about. Are those in my life right now? Oh, if I'm going to say yes to this, I'm going to have to say no to some things over here. I'm going to have to set some healthy boundaries in some spaces and sometimes have some hard conversations with some people that may not be ready to embrace this, healthier version of me. But that is the kind of the road that I invite women to go down. I'm like, if you go down this with me, if you're willing to do that, you can find your way to not feeling wiped out anymore, knowing who you are, not feeling like you're living reactively, but you're living proactively out of your own life. And you're surrounding yourself with people and spaces that want that for you too.
So, Melissa, it makes logical sense. But when we step into this space, we are not dealing with logic. We
No.
are dealing with emotions. And so
Mm-hmm.
many women share with me, like, the whole idea of, like, I know what to do, I just don't do it. So, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of women do see, like, that they're not on their priority list. They do see that they haven't, taken care of themselves. I have a saying that like, your job is to give you your own time, energy, and attention because first and foremost, you are a human being as well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like women have forgotten that they're human beings and they're just treating themselves like a machine, right? Like you're
Yeah.
not a machine, you are a human being. And the way that you care for everyone else, we just want to start giving just a small portion of that to you as well. But
Yeah.
when we get into this conversation, a lot of women will share with me, like, but I don't know what I need.
Mm-hmm.
How do we start to nurture that where they are starting to answer that question for themselves? Because I will say, like, in the coaching space,
Yeah.
like I want to support and I want to give answers. And also that would be the worst thing to do on this journey because that's where so them or an individual being able to answer those questions for themselves helps
Yeah.
build that self-trust, helps build that confidence, helps build like, oh my gosh, I can do this versus
Mm-hmm.
me saying, oh, do this, this, and this. We're falling into the same patterns if I start doing that. And that can be a little frustrating because, like, we do want answers, especially when we feel scared or fearful of like, or like, I don't know what the hell is happening here, right? Like, we do want that direction. So, for a woman that's saying, like, yeah, this sounds great and I know this, but I don't even know what I need,
Yeah.
where do you start with that?
I usually start with kind of going back to what I referenced earlier. It's such a good point because I've literally I had a friend about a year ago. Actually, we were having this conversation, and she has kids that are starting to get old enough to drive, and she's not having to drive them as many places, and they're able to take each other to these things. So all of a sudden, she's like, "I've got this time back in the evening that I've never had before." I'm like, "Great, great. How are you enjoying that?" She's like, "I don't know. I don't even know what to do. I forgot what that's like." I'm like, so I said, okay, think about before kids. What are some activities that nourish you? Did you enjoy walking? Do you enjoy the outdoors? Did you enjoy, a coffee with a friend? Did you think about those things you used to enjoy? And then how does that feel now? So, and so when I work, because you said something that's so important here. And that's for me, I call them empowerment sessions. I don't even call myself a coach. I call myself, I am here to advise and help you find what's already within you. You already have it there. I'm just giving you a few nudges and clues so you can tap into it. I'm not telling you or giving you anything that you don't already have within you. And so when they can start seeing like, oh, we're just going to tap into this resource within me that has been locked up because we are not given the tools to live with those things unlocked. And so we really have to do it. So I do a couple of things. So I ask them about the activities that nourish me. And if they get the same friend, and I told her, I'm like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to see you again in 3 weeks. I'm going to come back. I want you to really think about this. I go, in some days when you have that quiet time, I want you to just sit in the quiet. I don't want that. And boy, ooh is right. And I'm the first one the first time somebody told me that, I'm like, oh, that sounds terrible. I mean, I used to be the person that would just keep talking going just so there wouldn't be any quiet to avoid that, uncomfortable quiet when you're in conversations with people or just in a room with someone. And that was the first thing I had to learn to do, to get quiet and let things kind of come to the space and get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because when you allow yourself to get quiet, things will start coming to the surface. These narratives we've been told, these many times they're not true. And we treat them as truth because we've been given to these things to us. Like, it's selfish to do this. It's not okay to be angry. You shouldn't be sad for too long. Don't cry about that. I mean, these are the kinds of things we hear. So the second thing, get over it. Yes. Like we have any right to have a timeline of, I had a conversation earlier this week on my podcast with a woman about grief. And grief is one of those things where we talk to people. Everyone has this expectation of what their own grief and other people's grief should look like. Same thing happens when something hard happens. We're sad, we're angry, we're told to move, to get over it before we've even had a chance to acknowledge it and try to figure out where it comes from. Like, we haven't even had a chance to sit with it yet. So that first step, as uncomfortable as it sounds, is find somewhere comfortable where you feel safe. And I'm not just talking about physical safety. I'm talking about emotional safety. You know, for me, it's in my backyard where I can hear the birds. I'm sitting, we have a pool. I can sit by the pool. I can hear the trees rustle. It's quiet. I go out there without my phone. No phone.
Yes.
No phone.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be fine with you for, 10 to 15 minutes without your phone. The world will not go on fire. We've convinced ourselves it will. It will not. Yeah. And you go and you take that time, like if you're my friend, and you get quiet and you let the things rumble to the surface. You start writing them down. You write down all the things that come up. And then you look at them and you're like, and you start thinking, where did these come from? Are these based in something I heard when I was 5, 10, 20, 40? Who told me this? Did I tell myself this? And start questioning. And over time, it takes time. This is the other thing, is you have to really like get over that guilt that you deserve that time. I'm like, think about all the time you give to everybody and everything else. And it goes back to what you said earlier. Make sure you're making that time for you too. And that you don't, because this is how we get to kind of answer these questions. And even with it exists within ourselves already. So you get quiet, you write these things down. And then I also, like, if that isn't bringing enough up for you, start writing down, excuse me, all the emotions that you're feeling, and change the narrative around emotions. I am absolutely adamant about the fact, and a lot of people think that they don't understand it, but I got here on my own journey. There are no good or bad emotions. There are no positive or negative emotions. Mm-hmm. Emotions are clues. That's it. Hard stop. Emotions are clues. Some of them are more difficult and some of them are more enjoyable to feel. That is true, but they are not good or bad. They are not positive or negative. We have to take this moral idea off of emotions and quit moralizing them. Allow ourselves to feel them. If you're angry, why are you angry? Because one of the things I found in my work is I had years and years of anger stored up that I'd never been allowed to feel. I started hearing when I was a very young kid, when I started to cry about something that my parents didn't want me to cry about, didn't think I should cry about, whatever, dry it up. And it was like,
that'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it came out. It's like, I've got all this anger tied up in me that I need to release from my body. I've been carrying around all this frustration and anger for all of these years. So just even acknowledging it. And, one of the things about emotions is some of them we need to like tap into what the root of them is so we can unlearn and relearn new narratives around that. Other things it's just simple enough to acknowledge, I have not given myself space to feel any kind of anger all these years. Mm-hmm. So I know I've got a lot stored up, and that's what I need to know. And we're going to give it room to come out. And so one of the things I did is I had a wall that was outside our house in a corner. It was a brick wall. I couldn't hurt it. I couldn't break it. It couldn't break me. And I got old pillow, and my therapist was like, I want you to take that pillow. I want you to hit that wall till you're sweating. I want you to scream and yell. And if there's someone you need to say something to, they're right there and you're screaming and yelling and getting it out. Let it go, release it. And that sounds dramatic, but those are the, when you carry it around, I was 50, so I had a lot going on in there. And so, but that's an example of, I was able to start tapping into why I felt angsty, why my body was having these responses to things, why certain things would trigger me, like why I would fly off the handle about something that made no sense when I thought about it later. But when I could look at what came up when I got quiet, and I could look at the narratives I've been told, and I could look at the messages I've been given, and I could look at the emotions I'd been feeling or not allowing myself to feel, the puzzle pieces started coming together of the things that I needed. And then from there, that was like, you know what? On a day when there's a lot of frustration and anger, there's a good vigorous HIIT workout or, hot yoga or something where you can really sweat it out, grind it out, a Peloton workout, whatever it is, where it's like, today requires that kind of thing. Other days, where there's some sadness or some grief or there's confusion, you might need to be really gentle with yourself. Yeah. So that might mean you would just allow quiet space, and people are going to freak out because they tell you you're not supposed to take a nap. Maybe you need a 20-minute nap. Just close your eyes, set the alarm, close your eyes for 20 minutes. Just allow yourself to be quiet. Do some yoga, go for a walk and listen to the birds with no devices. Drive to, if you're like, I don't have time for that. When you're driving to work or driving to get the kids from school or sitting at soccer practice, quiet or soothing music or a podcast with some messages that really lift your spirit. And that all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I'm starting to tap into the things that nourish me. I'm starting to create what you start doing is you start creating a menu for you. So there's certain things I do every day. I always move my body in some way every day. I'm mindful of the kinds of things I fill my body with. I pay attention to my macros. I know I need a different level of protein now than I did when I was 35. I know that as a 56-year-old woman. I'm trying to build, make sure I'm strong and durable and not, be able to lift up my future grandkids and all those things. So I'm mindful of those things. But then within that, I've got all these other things. Do I need 10 minutes of quiet? Do I need a meditation? Do I need this podcast is going to make me laugh. We underestimate the power of a good laugh. Yeah. And the joy and the emotion that brings up in us. And so, but it starts, you got to be willing to get quiet with yourself. And people are going to be like, oh my God, I don't want to get quiet with myself. And I'm like, or they don't have time. I'm like, you do. You just have to choose it. And that's where the choices come into play, because it's really like, oh, I've got the kids in the car. I'm like, when you drop the kids off, they're not in the car anymore. It's right. Just, so that's how and then when people start finding the answers themselves, then it's like, all right, so we've got this information now. Let's talk about the next steps, doable steps we can take with this information about yourself that you have within you. And then that builds confidence, and that builds like, oh, wow, I didn't know I had this in me. And you realize how resilient and resourceful you are.
Yeah. So I wrote, when you were speaking, I wrote the permission to experience your emotions, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but once we fully experience anger, it allows us to experience more joy.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So a lot of times people think like, oh, I'm just going to experience all these like negative, and I'm air quoting that, emotions. And yes, likely that is going to be part of the journey.
Yeah.
And it allows you to then be able to experience the joy, the excitement, the hope, the like all these more positive.
The authentic gratitude. You're not forcing gratitude. And there's a lot of language out there about gratitude and gratitude journals. And the things that frustrate me with that is it's like, we need to talk about all the emotions, not the gratitude.
Yeah.
Because if we don't allow space for all of them to be organically felt, then we can't get to an authentic space. Forced gratitude is only good for a short amount of time. And it's not true, authentic, that contentment in your soul kind of gratitude that you're not talking yourself into anything. You organically feel it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important point too.
Yeah. Okay. So we mentioned this earlier before we hit record, this idea of stuffing. So in
Mhm.
my world, I experience this a little bit differently than in your world, but it's very much so a metaphor for what is going on in the body. So a lot of women that come to me that may be struggling with their weight and wanting to
Mhm.
lose weight, they oftentimes experience stress or emotional eating in a
Mhm.
way to cope with emotions they don't want to experience. And so they
Mhm.
essentially stuff themselves, or AKA stuff their emotions in order
Mhm.
to survive. And so a lot
Yeah.
of the work that I do with my coaching clients is to be able to disconnect that experience from food. So
Mhm.
being able to identify, well, no, it wasn't that you were addicted to food or that, that you had no control over food. It was that you did not know how to be with your emotions. And so
Mhm.
you have to create those skill sets and those outlets for the emotion that is essentially triggering you to go to food in that way, because food has just been the coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And so when we can really separate that experience, it's so eye-opening for women to be like, holy shit, it was never the food, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so it's right. Like, and we all, I mean, it could be the food, it could be whatever you fill in the blank. We
Yeah.
all attempt to
Absolutely.
cope in some way.
Yeah.
But tell me, in your, like, when you said like the stuffing aspect, I'm just curious, like, how do you see that with the women that you work with?
It's a variety of ways. It might be with food, it might be with shopping, it might be with gossip, it might be with alcohol, it might be with just noise all the time. They're just always moving. They won't sit. Like they just keep going, keep going, keep going. They don't know how to say no. Because if they say no, and if anything slows down, if anything gives you any kind of clarity, then this emotion is right there waiting to be dealt with, because we stuff them, but they just we don't stuff them. We just stuff them into our body and they still come back up. The pressure of them still brings them back into surface. And the scary thing about it is we see this manifesting in some really harmful ways, in disease, in eating disorders, in alcoholism, in various addictions, in heart failure, in there's diabetes. I mean, there's so many
Digestive.
outliers. Yes, digestive, like acid reflux. I was able to connect that to the anxiety that I was experiencing from all the things that these narratives I was believing, that I wasn't safe, that I had to keep, I was running from the lion, I was protecting my family from the lion, that everything that happened was, my system couldn't normalize, couldn't like tell the difference between this is a minor, like, yeah, it's kind of a problem for the next hour, but your life's not blowing up versus, we're going to the emergency room, the house is on fire. Like my
Right.
system couldn't, tell the difference between that, but also because of, and it just depends on the environment you came in. Sometimes it's faith spaces where we've been told how to be and not to be, our homes, just the cultural narrative. I mean, we live in a society that's been very dictated by into gender norms. And so there's all these places. And so when they feel like we are starting to feel something we've been told not to, we don't feel safe feeling it, then or we don't know what to, and we feel like, oh no, what do I do? I can't tell anybody about this. This is not safe. Even though that's not actually true, it might feel true based on what you've learned and known. And so we find all these ways to mask it and stuff it. And so I tell people, I'm like, find a place where you feel safe. That's why when I talk about the quiet place, I'm like, you nothing in your system is not going to allow anything to come to surface that it doesn't feel safe revealing to you, because your system's there to protect itself. So go in there. And I also tell them, like, don't try to do it all at one time. Give yourself time and grace. But yeah, the stuffing piece is, it's funny. It's kind of the opposite of that. Oh yeah, I mean, you can stuff it down, but like any pillow. So use a pillow, for example. If we keep stuffing it more filling, At some point, the fillings, there's only enough room for so much filling, and it's going to start, it's just not going to take anymore. It's not going to allow you to stuff any more in there. Same thing with our bodies. If we keep stuffing those emotions, and all of a sudden you find yourself blowing up on your coworker or your partner or your kids, and you're like, you never meant for that to spew out onto them like it did. And most likely the circumstance probably didn't dictate that was necessary, but you couldn't carry it. It was the last straw. It was literally the straw that broke the camel's back. And so I think it's really ironic, but we will do all kinds of, and I think when people say I don't have time, like think about all the time you put into trying not to feel that emotion, whether it's in these other habits and these other things you have taken on. What if you replaced that time with actually trying to accept that, acknowledge it, create a healthy narrative around it? Again, I go back to that. Curiosity has been key for me. And curiosity and comfort can't live together for very long, because curiosity will not allow you to stay comfortable. And I'm not talking about comfort in terms of I've got a warm house and a nice bed and running water. I'm talking about comfort in, oh, if I do that, that might really upset my daughter. That might really upset Aunt Tilly. That my mom is going to go through the roof if I do that. Mm-hmm. Is that in your best interest? Is that expectation fair or healthy to you? Is there a way you can navigate that and reframe that in a way that's honoring to you? Because continuing to, doing the same thing over and over again, we've heard many times, expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. We know that doesn't work, but yet we do it time and time again because we're so scared, and so many times, and there's so much fear. And fear is used to keep us in control and keep us in a box and keep us where everything else is comfortable with us. Yeah. But that fear, the thing that I learned is once I realized what was inside of me and what I was actually capable of, it's like, yeah, this was hard. And I've had to have some hard conversations, and some relationships have definitely changed. But also, I don't feel scared anymore. Mm-hmm. I feel very content. I feel very safe. There's been some mourning and sadness about relationships that weren't prepared to accept me in this new space, but there's also been people that really surprised me, that have showed up for me in a way I never imagined. I'm now surrounded with people that I know are authentically for me, mm-hmm. and want me to just operate always from that space of health and authenticity, never abandoning myself. And so, and what we find out too as women is codependent relationships and people pleasing and being afraid to disappoint and over explaining are a big part of these narratives that we've talked about. So all of a sudden you're looking at your relationships and like, oh, that's really not very healthy, the way that we've been operating here. Yeah. And I can tell you is changed dramatically. Some longtime friendships that I've had, how I engage in those friendships is very different now than it was 5 years ago. And that's been hard in some cases for my friends to like, I'm not emotionally dumping on you all the time anymore. I know that wasn't healthy, that I don't need to do that. I've got it within me to not continually emotionally dump about the same thing over and over again. I can actually do something about that. I don't have that narrative doesn't have to stay the same. And I think, but I find too that I'm no longer like, if someone's doing that with me, I'm like, okay, I've heard you talk about this 5 times now in the last 2 months. So let's start talking about something we can do about this. What's an action we can take within this that could shift this narrative? Yeah. And move in a different direction. And sometimes people, and what you have to accept, and this is hard, and I still struggle with this, is that sometimes people don't want to come along with you. And you're like, okay, if that's not a road you're willing to go down, that's great. But I'm not willing to hash this out. When you're ready to make the move, I am here for you. I am in your camp. I'm your number one cheerleader. But we are not going to continue to rehash the same thing and expect a different result, knowing that you've chosen not to make the choice that's going to change that narrative. And that can be hard. I do a lot of script things with people when they're like, it's time to have that conversation. Like, I've done this work. I know my value. I know what I value. I've identified the things that nourish me. I've identified who I am as a person by my character traits. I've identified how I want to feel over the next 6 months and what it's going to, kinds of things it's going to take for me to get there. But now I have to tell people. and that can be a really daunting, scary thing. And so we do a lot of script work with that. We talk in I statements about how we're going to present it. But one of the things the first things I say is like, listen, we're going to work on a script. You're going to pull those words out that feel like you. You're going to practice it in the mirror. You're going to practice it with me. We're going to do those things. And at the end of the day, they still might not be comfortable with it. And that doesn't mean you did anything wrong, because the first thing we tend to do as women is like, oops, that made them uncomfortable. I must be wrong. And we shape shift back into whatever it is that works for them and abandon ourselves again. But this time when we abandon ourselves, we know we've done it because we've done enough work to be able to tell. And we realize like, oh, I don't think I can stay here because I know what's possible now. And so that becomes difficult. And so we talk a lot about, you say that you speak in I statements in very non-threatening language, like, listen, I will be at your house for Thanksgiving. I thank you so much for the invitation. What can I bring? And also, if this topic comes up, that's not a topic I'm willing to engage in anymore. That's not a person I'm willing to bash behind her back when she's not there anymore. I'm not going to engage in that way. So if y'all decide to go down that road, fine, just know that I'll probably excuse myself. I mean, that's just an example. We got the holidays coming up and things can get spicy. And I hear
wild.
Oh my gosh, so wild. And so that might not sit well with mom if you decide to do that. But you're not asking her to change her behavior per se. You're just telling her, this is what's going to happen if you go down that road. I'm not going to leave myself in that situation anymore that doesn't feel honoring to me and my health. And so it might not go over very well the first time. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. And over time, and sometimes there are people, I mean, I can tell you, I've got family members that I love from afar now. It made it, but it was one of those choices that I realized once I wasn't engaging in that day-to-day trauma bonding, codependent, toxic behavior, it was like, I don't miss this behavior. I wish that they could see this, but I feel my system is so much more settled. I feel so much more in touch with who I actually am than how I ever have before. And so for me, there's been some there's consequences either side. And so it's kind of that understanding of whatever I say yes to, I'm saying no to something else. But I always come back to make sure that no isn't always to you, that you're not, if you have to abandon yourself and what feels safe and healthy to you continually, then those are not the kinds of people and spaces that are healthy for you. And that's okay.
Yeah, I heard it described as the boundary is for you, not for them.
Exactly. It's not about their behavior.
Right. It's just saying what your behavior will be. And I experience that quite often in the weight loss space when individuals just, in groups will comment on a woman's body, whether she lost weight or gained weight or whatnot. My friend group knows I'm out. Like I do not engage in that level of criticism of a woman's body because we have no idea what she may be going through, right? Like maybe she lost weight because she was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
Maybe she gained weight because she lost her mom, right? Yeah. Like we don't know what's going on. And I refuse to be someone that engages in that conversation. And so I had to set that boundary for me, not for them. Mm-hmm. They can certainly continue to have the conversation, but I'm out of it.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned something like so powerful too, is sometimes we have this narrative that's running in our mind that we never told anyone about. So my therapist, she will always tell me, she's like, Jana, did you tell anyone about that? And I'm like, no, I really didn't. And she's like, so what do you want them to do about it? Like, if they don't even know, know if you needed that, right? If they did not know you needed that, how do you expect them to do anything about it? That
Yes.
was a game, like that was a big game changer for me because I felt like so imposing almost if I were to say what I
Yeah.
needed. I felt like I
Yeah.
was imposing on the dynamic or like it would be too much or I was too much or like who do you
Mhm.
think you are to require these things? Right? Like there was a lot of internal narrative that like internal dialogue that
Yeah.
not healthy that I still like although I can express my needs more and more,
Mhm.
it is still an act of courage to be able to say, hey, to be able to approach it like, hey, for me, like I gotta eat like every 3 to 4 hours. Like I need
Mhm.
nourishment often. Otherwise, my blood sugar goes super low. I get hangry. It's a no-go. But in
Mhm.
other groups of people, like people go for a long period of time without food, like so there's just
Yeah.
I mean, and that might like we don't think about it in that way, but for you to
Mhm.
say like I need to bring my snacks with me or whatever the thing is, like that could be a really powerful move for someone.
Yeah. And I think too, so many times, we rehearse the things we think are gonna be hard. So many times, so many people are like, great. Thanks for letting me know. I love that you said we as women, especially, we want people to be mind readers. And we'll go around furious for days that no one helped with the laundry, that no one put their shoes away, that no one, did the dishes besides us, that no one wiped off the table, whatever it is. No one cleaned up the break room at work and we're the only ones that ever do it. And I'm the only one that ever orders these supplies. What did you ever let anybody know you'd like help with that? Did
Yeah.
you ever, so I think so communication is kind. And so many times when we, again, going back to, we will express these things and they'll be like, oh, thank God. I was so tired of watching you wear yourself out. I was just because if they think you're okay doing it, they'll let you keep doing it. They're not going to, you're going to have to communicate. And I think sometimes it's part of that. When I talk to people, I'm like, you have some accountability here in what you let you're part of this. And that's where the choice comes in. So life is not happening to you. You are allowing that. And yes, there are things that happen to us, and sometimes horrible things that happen to us that are out of our control, but we still have choice within that on how we're going to respond, show up, that we're going to express what we need, that we're going to express, no, that's actually, I appreciate your heart. That's actually not helpful right now.
Mhm.
Would you mind doing this instead? Or if I can come back around to you, but all that communication is kind. And then you find sometimes that you actually end up getting rid of like kind of that conflict that's in the air that nobody's talking about. All
Yeah.
of a sudden it dissipates because you've actually started communicating that thing in your head
Yeah.
rather than letting it sit in there, wonder if someone's going to start reading your mind and just respond to it.
Yeah. Dang it, that would be so much better.
I know.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't
I
know.
know. Well, you have to take everything with that. If you want to be able them to read that, they got to be able to see all the other stuff too. And I've decided that wasn't worth the exchange.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. Well, Melissa, I mean, I really could talk to you for hours. This is such the way that you share it and the way that you're so vulnerable and honest with your own story, but also how you support women. I just want to honor that in your own journey because that is part of your journey. And I want to thank you for being willing to share with my audience as well in this space to continue to spread that conversation and that impact and allow other women to mainly maybe go get a pillow and like start hitting a wall or something. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Come from this. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jana. Thanks for doing this. These conversations matter. The more of us that can have them, the better. It's time to stop feeling like we have to live in isolation with these things that we're carrying. We're all carrying this together, and we don't make changes by keeping it quiet and building shame around it. We make changes and shift narratives and create safe spaces for us to exist in by sharing this with each other and coming together in community and not being afraid to say, talk the shit that needs to be talked about.
Yes, please do. But not about others, but
exactly about what's happening in your life. So I call them layers. There's all these things that get in our way of us living our healthiest, most authentic life. And it's by acknowledging them, bringing them forward, giving them air to breathe, and realizing we're not alone with it. We can show up and support each other.
I love that. We are not alone. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me.